All right, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast 53. Got Big Box Steve on the mic, of course, the Big Smooth. Thanks for watching and listening. If you're listening on Anchor or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, appreciate you listening. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like, and comments always appreciated. Respond to all of them. Coming up to March Madness. So this for you guys, March Madness fans. We're going to talk a little about that today, but don't miss the tournament editions. So if you're listening to this one right now, we will have tournament picks throughout the tournament, kind of like we do with the NFL, except I imagine we'll be more right on NCAA basketball. But who knows? We'll see. Maybe our NFL is better than our NCAA basketball.
We didn't do too bad in football.
We do pretty well in basketball typically. It used to anyway. So we'll see how we do this year, and we'll make a comparison for everybody listening. Before we jump into some March Madness stuff, uh, Wes obviously not here, but we talked last week about a lot about Derek Carr. So we had a long Derek Carr conversation, and
Wes was right.
Wes is right. So Derek Carr to the Saints. So what do you think about that?
I think it made sense in the way, in the way that the way he left the Raiders, he wanted to feel wanted. And the Jets, I think, were like, he was like, their second pick. So they're like going to prom and they're waiting on the prom queen to say yes, but if not, I'll go out with you. And that's what happened with the Jets. And he was like, screw this, I'll just go to the Saints.
Yeah, I think
Because obviously now the Jets are.
the Jets before really wanted Rodgers, and I
Yeah.
think you're right in that point is that I think they would have taken Carr if Rodgers would have gave him like some kind of hard no or signed with someone else or got traded by someone else to someone else. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but I think with him still available, they're looking at Carr as a lot of money for not a guaranteed winner. Where I think they're seeing Aaron Rodgers as a guaranteed. They think he's a guaranteed winner anyway. Um, where
Guaranteed to get to the conference championship and lose.
right, well, at least get into the playoffs, right? I think, and you've heard them talking with Aaron Rodgers a lot, and he's been out there and had the Green Bay said okay, gave the okay for him to talk to the Jets, and he went out there and talked with them. I think that was Wednesday or Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
and so they haven't released a lot of that information yet. So maybe something's in the works there. Um, and I don't think New Orleans is a terrible spot for Derek Carr, given that the NFC isn't particularly strong in general. The division's real weak, So if and they're talking now about Michael Thomas staying, so they're talking about signing, Michael Thomas again, and if he can stay healthy, that's a really good receiving core with Olave and Thomas. Uh, it's always good to have Taysom Hill, if they can keep Kamara, if they have solid players. So
Yeah, and it looks like the Bucks are going to be in rebuild mode. They released their right tackle. They released Fournette. Levante David's a free agent. They were talking about releasing Devin White. So it's kind of like they're.
well, Dean's a free Jamal Dean's
Yeah,
a free
Jamal
agent
Dean is a
too,
free
and
agent also.
he's going to get a huge contract somewhere. So yeah,
So
the Bucks are definitely in full on rebuild. Uh, Carolina, I just don't think is that good anyway.
mm.
I don't know what Carolina's plan is, to be honest with you. like like what is your plan at this point? Like I guess you go quarterback in the draft, or what do you do?
Well, they're at 9, so
Yeah,
they have to trade up.
right.
There's not going to be one of the four is not going to be available at 9.
And so you get rid of Christian McCaffrey. You don't have a quarterback. You don't really have any good running backs. Your running back by committee wasn't terrible, but you're really not playing that hard of teams. So yeah, they might have looked good against Tampa and against, New Orleans and Atlanta,
Mhm.
but and their defense not real strong either, Like they got a couple of good
Right.
young guys, but yeah, I'm not sure what Carolina's plan is right now. They're a little bit off for me.
Right.
Atlanta,
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
know. We'll see if it's gonna be.
Atlanta's got some young talent that's developing right now. So uh, I think they kind of. I still think they have to go quarterback. I don't think Reader was a real good pick for them last year.
Yeah.
I think they should have
Well, that's the
stayed with
thing is the South has no quarterbacks except Derek Carr now.
right,
Because you're not going to trust Trask, you're not going to trust Ritter, and you're not going to trust Sam Darnold.
right. So I mean, again, overall, I think it's a good move for Carr. He got paid out of the deal as well, so he's getting plenty of money now. He's going to probably the best team in that division overall, and the NFC overall, I don't think super strong. So
No.
um, chance to possibly make the playoffs, and once you're in the playoffs, it's anybody's
Who
ball game,
knows?
right?
Yeah.
And look at the Giants. You go with Eli Manning and win Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's true.
So, uh, so not terrible for Carr. I know you're a Raiders fan, and it's tough to see your quarterback go, but it's probably was time, and kind of just wish him well and move on, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sad to see him go because I feel like he got all the crap, even though it wasn't really his fault for that bad organization.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely don't know. You can look at defensive stats and things like that. You can look at draft picks and screwed up drafts and things. And so yeah, it's obviously and his stats I think tell a decent story about of him being an above average quarterback. Um, Nothing to say, superstar level, but not to say
Yeah.
he's, a guy you'd want to cut. So
Right.
I would say he's an above average quarterback. Speaking of guys I want to cut that I wouldn't sign, so Daniel Jones signs this huge contract, right? So the Giants. Um, there's just a couple stats that I saw, but so Daniel Jones is not terrible, right? He's mobile, which I like, you know, but is he really worth that much money? I mean, if you're the Giants, are you really spending that much on him?
No, but it's like remember when Joe Flacco got a huge contract? It's because it's kind of like your quarterback. But you got to look at do I think Daniel Jones deserves that money? No. But you also have to look at the fact who did he really have on his team besides Barkley?
Right.
I mean, Darius Slayton was their number one receiver.
Yeah, he
So
didn't have exceptional throwing stats though either, right? So like did you see that there was something that said that he was the first quarterback to ever sign for over 20 million a year to not throw 20 touchdowns, something like that in a season. And it's like it's pretty crazy when you think about the production he had. And a lot of his production was his legs, and they won some games. I think their defense played better than their defense is last year. And Barkley, he obviously in a contract year was worried about his money, so he played like Barkley again.
I mean, the problem is what's the alternative? Who are the Giants going to get?
Right.
There's no one out there.
I mean, wouldn't you? Yeah, I guess. I mean, you can't know that for sure, but you could land Derek Carr for a lot less money.
I don't think it was a lot less, but they were comparable. The thing with the Daniel Jones contract is once you go delve into it, it's actually more like a 2-year deal. So I think a lot of people took it as like, oh my gosh, she's getting 40 million a year, da, 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 da. But it's like they always do that where they say these astronomical numbers, and then once you look at the contract, they're like, oh, okay, this is why. Because it's the whole why Deshaun Watson and what Lamar Jackson wants. It's all about guaranteed money. That's
Right.
all the number you have to look at for any contract.
Well, it's also the 40 million includes incentive money too. So everybody like Geno Smith, everybody's like, oh, Geno Smith got a huge contract, right? But he did get a good contract, but it's really only 3 years, 75 million. It's the extra 30 million is all incentives.
Right.
and it's not guaranteed money like what you're talking about with Watson. That's why Watson's contract was so crazy. Um, and I think that's why Lamar Jackson is fighting so hard now, because he's like, look, dude, you're going to give Deshaun Watson that? I'm Lamar Jackson. I'm an MVP.
Yeah. Well, because I was delving into this and got all the people saying it's racist. But what's coming across, and it's like owners like Mark Davis. Sure, he's an owner of an NFL team, but does he have $230 million in his pocket? Because that's what you need for guaranteed money. You have to have all the money and you have to put it in an escrow account all up front. And so that's why a lot of teams are shying away from him, because they don't have that kind of money.
Right. Yeah, no, and there's definitely some owners that are super rich, but some of these owners are franchise owners.
Yeah.
You can't just come in and just be like, hey, I want to buy a team and just start,
Right.
and go out for a while.
It's not like Steve Ballmer or somebody coming in, or buying like the Clippers or something, and coming in buying an NFL team and just be like, boom, here you go.
Well, it's that guy, the Jags owner, right? That guy's like super rich.
Yeah, Shad Khan. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even know how much money he really got. All we know about what he reported to the NFL when he bought the team.
Yeah.
He's like,
Oil money.
if I need to, I'll go back into the other account and I'll get more money at
Well, he's got his own wrestling organization too.
it. You ever watched Joe Rogan podcast at all?
Not in a while, but I used to. Yeah.
He did one podcast where he was talking about the Saudi oil money and just Middle East oil money in general. And he's like comparing, he's like, well, everybody tells you that you think Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and these guys are the richest people in the world, but they're not. He's like, these guys, they're like trillionaires, and we don't even know it, because we don't. It's not the same way that we count money, how they count money. You don't even know what they got. And that's true. It's 100% true that we think Elon Musk the richest guy in the world, but he's not even close.
Yeah. What is it? What's that city that is like one of the richest cities in the world?
Oh, or
Yeah, Dubai.
Dubai, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's so much money there; it's not even funny. And you don't even know what the money is really. So but yeah, I mean that definitely makes sense for Lamar. I thought it was interesting though that they gave him the open tag.
Well, because I
Maybe
don't think anyone's going to pay him.
right. Well, maybe somebody does, or maybe he just wants to get traded and takes a deal, and then gets a deal for him, and they get a couple first rounds out of it.
Well, the thing is if it's a deal that the Ravens like, they can match the offer.
Right.
And that's all they're trying to do, is trying to tell Lamar, like, because he's his own agent too. He's like, you're not going to get all this guaranteed money. Here's this. Because we don't even know what the Ravens have offered.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, if you're the Ravens, like, and if he wants out, like, how bad do you want to keep him?
Well, I don't know if he wants out. He just wants his money.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing is, so let's say Lamar someone gives him 230 guaranteed. Guess who's coming up next? Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, give me all this guaranteed money too.
Well, and I don't particularly like a lot of the ESPN guys, but they were talking about that. It's like, you can't let Lamar set the precedent as this group of owners, especially with all these other guys coming up for contracts. They're like, they're kind of, it's not just Baltimore laying down the law, it's kind of like a collective saying.
Well, yeah, that's why everyone was mad at Cleveland.
Right. Cleveland is like, we don't care. We need a quarterback.
I mean, like, if I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm like, why should a guy that sat out a year for rape allegations get more money than me?
Well, that's the thing, is that's why he's a little upset, which is all kind of leads him to be like maybe wanting out of Baltimore. Uh, who Herm Edwards made a really good point. He was talking about, he's like, look, he's like, this is why the agent is so important
Mm-hmm.
because he plays that middleman and you're not hearing it directly from the horse's mouth. Like Lamar shouldn't be hearing the why he shouldn't get paid from
Right.
in the negotiations. Like you need an agent who can spin that in a way so it doesn't make Lamar mad. He doesn't understand the politics of the game, and
One of
that's
the same as
the
the
downfall.
agent could feel out to everyone to figure out what a contract should be.
Right. Yeah, and so I think Lamar, hearing those things, that's a tough thing to hear of why you're not worth the money, you know,
Right.
and that doesn't sit well with a player, especially like an elite player.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that was interesting. So speaking about quarterbacks, I don't particularly like Colin Coward anymore. I used to like him, but I don't know if you seen his show a lot lately. Um,
Oh,
but they were doing the top 10 NFC quarterbacks. And so I kind of wanted to hit on that. So
is there 10
Brady,
good quarterbacks in the NFC?
Brady obviously is retired at this point, so he's not included. Um, and then they didn't talk about Aaron Rodgers because they don't know if he's
Right.
staying in the NFC. So if when you're talking top 10, assuming Aaron Rodgers stays, I think he's got to be number one, right?
Right.
So who do you think they had at number one? Or
Um,
at this point, it would be number two.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's close. I thought it was interesting, but they picked Stafford. So Colin Coward's got Stafford as the number one quarterback right now in the NFC because he's assuming Rodgers is out.
I thought you were going to say Stafford, but yeah.
Number two, Jalen Hurts. We didn't have a whole lot of good stuff to say about Jalen Hurts either.
Oh yeah, because he's a runner and he's Howard
Undersized,
likes his prototypical guys.
right? Number three,
Um, Kirk Cousins.
nope. Cousins, he's got it seven.
Oh wow. Um,
I thought that was a little bit of a surprise.
Dak Prescott.
Jared Goff.
Okay.
Jared Goff at number three.
Like I said, there's not that many good ones.
Right. But do you think Jared Goff is number three? I mean, he had a good year last year. You got to give him
If we're
that.
going off of last year, yeah. I mean, but then you can't do Stafford because he didn't play.
Right. But Goff's been to a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. I think he's like how many Pro Bowl? He's got a few Pro
Yep. A few Pro
Bowls.
Bowls under his belt. So I guess like you can't really argue that too much. Give Goff three. How about number four?
Um, Kyler Murray.
Yep, Kyler Murray. Don't know I necessarily agree with that one, but I guess there's arguments for Kyler Murray, but I think he has some downside too.
Yeah, but that's saying it's not about him being that good. It's him. It's about him being in the NFC.
Right.
I mean, and Goff is a 3-time Pro Bowler. So,
Yeah. And then he's got Prescott at number five.
are you mad? Did they not put Fields in the top 10?
Well, they didn't do 9 and 10. Um, I mean, I imagine you have to put Fields at 9 or 10, right?
You'd think.
So they got six is where they got Derek Carr.
Yeah.
And then seven, Kirk Cousins, eight, Geno Smith.
Yeah. And
Um,
then 9, Justin Fields.
yeah, they did do 9 and 10. I mean, my guess is if they were doing it, they would have Fields at 9 or 10, like you almost have to. But he did mention Brock Purdy and um, who else? One more. Oh, Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones.
Yeah, so he mentioned Jones and Purdy, and he said, "I'm not even going to rate them." Um, but I mean, I got when I look at that list, obviously I'm a Bears fan and a Fields fan, and I think Fields is as good as almost any of those guys. He brings
Well,
a
he
lot
just
of
needs to get
different
his
things,
passing numbers up, and that might just because he's. It's hard because he's young
right?
and he doesn't have any weapons. So we have to kind of see next year what happens if they get him some weapons.
Well, and he's at least this year, most of this year, they were running the ball with him a lot, instead of passing it. I mean, designed runs. He was definitely scrambling, but they were designing a lot of runs for him. But Kyler Murray, I mean, he's a similar quarterback, not size wise, but as far as his running ability and his scrambling, you're not designing a lot of runs for Murray though, because you're not going to go head on with linebackers like
Right. Well, he though
six
could
three,
throw.
240.
He has a pretty good arm though too. Well, and then with Murray, they made the playoffs last year. I mean,
No, yeah, the year before.
Fields. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing. Yeah. I mean, Fields was on a team that had the worst record in the NFL. Now, granted, it's not his fault because his team is so barren, but everyone talks about wins as a quarterback stat, right? I
Oh,
mean,
of course.
and so that's why for me, Fields gets an NA because I still haven't seen enough of him with talent around him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and he'll have. I mean, it should be a better year for them. We'll see, but if you were to pick a quarterback though that to start your team with, and you're talking about I'm going to start a franchise around these guys. I mean, you're not going to start your franchise around an old Stafford or an old Goff or an older Kirk Cousins.
But it's not talking about who you could start a franchise with, is it?
No, no, just top 10. But when I think
Yeah,
of top 10, like first thing I think about is,
right.
who's going to be my quarterback long term.
But would you take a young Stafford as you know what I mean? If you're talking when they were young, and Jared Goff's not that old.
Yeah, he's what, getting to 30, something like that.
He can't. He's not that. He's 28.
28. He's getting close. I would probably, as a young group, like Cousins, I would definitely not take when he was young. He's better now than he was then, or at least everybody thought how good everybody assumed he was going to be. Geno Smith, definitely, he didn't have a good, he's definitely coming out later here. I never liked Dak from the beginning personally.
Right.
So yeah, Stafford, definitely when he was young, I'd take him for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
and then Kyler Murray, Justin, or Jalen Hurts.
well, same thing. Like
When did you want to put Jalen? Jalen Hurts should be one.
right now, yeah,
I mean, like what he did in the Super Bowl.
yeah, he had a great Super Bowl in particular. Um, yeah, I mean, but I guess you look at Stafford last year and you say, injuries and team injuries and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But they were talking about these not on that one, but a different thing I was reading about these supplemental picks.
Oh yeah, the 49ers.
Yeah, you get 11
Yeah,
picks and
black coaches
also,
and black GMs.
well, they get like four from that, right? So four of them come from their coaches that moved forward. So developing minority coaches. But they also get these picks for, not re-signing people.
Yeah,
And it's like, and the Rams got a bunch for that same thing too. And it's like, but that kind of hurts you a little bit too, because you're saying, yeah, you're going to let these guys walk, but you can't just let everybody walk.
Right.
So that was something that
Well, and it's a sliding scale. So most of the third rounders released, yes. So there's 7 third rounders for comp picks.
right.
And I think the 349ers ones were all for black coaches.
Yeah, they got 3 third rounds, right?
Yeah, and
And a fourth
then
or a
you had
fifth.
yeah, and then you had the Chiefs, I think, for they had one black coach,
Right.
and then the Browns had somebody. But yeah, I mean, it's a site. So like the Cardinals and the Commanders lost free agents that must have been really good.
Right. Chandler Jones, Cardinals got a good pick for him.
Yeah, third round pick.
Right.
And then, which I don't understand. Chandler Jones didn't have that great a year. But it all depends on. So like the Raiders got a fourth and or a fifth and a sixth, and that was for Zay Jones, and I can't remember who the other pick was, but yeah. So it's usually you're getting like fifth or sixth round picks. It's going to be the new thing of like if you have coaches or whatever, that's get you third round picks, and that's crazy.
Right, right. I mean, can you imagine? Because third round to me, that's a good solid pick.
Right. Because they got one for Sala again. I
Yeah,
don't know how that happened. They got Sala, they got McDaniel, they got D'Amico Ryan's got all three of them, and then Rand Carthon
right.
went as a GM.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's like because when I look at third round picks, like these are the guys that got talent, maybe from smaller schools, maybe they just haven't played, in some of these bigger games and have the national
Mhm.
exposure. Whatever the case is, like you could get some good solid players in the third round. And so to get 3 or 4 of those, that's crazy.
Mhm.
Now you could take more chances, I think, earlier in the draft because, you can say, okay, now who's left that's solid in the third round that I could pick up.
Right. But I don't know, do the 49ers have a first round pick?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. Probably not. Didn't they trade them all for Trey Lance?
Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting dynamic in San Francisco next year.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk a little basketball here.
Oh yeah. So the 49ers first pick is their third round compensation. There. If they didn't get those comp picks, their first pick would have been the fifth round.
Jeez. Well,
So
John Lynch said that was his plan, banking on compensatory
well,
picks.
because they must have traded for McCaffrey,
Right, right. They
like a
lost the
second and a fourth or
gave up everything else for McCaffrey.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we got basketball, NCAA basketball, which honestly is one of my favorite times of year. I don't, there's just NCAA basketball tournament times, even the conference tournaments, which are going right now, but especially the big tournament, it just hits a little different than any other sport does because there's so much energy around it. It's
Right.
fans are really into it, but people are really into it for some reason. People that aren't typically sports fans, like they just went to school somewhere, they're like doing brackets and going for their team if it makes it, wanting their teams to go. It's like you see somebody doesn't even like sports and like Iowa went to
Oh my
Iowa
God.
State, and now the Iowa State's in the tournament and they're like the biggest Iowa State fan that you ever seen, right? You see this in your workplace, and you see this just everywhere. You
Mhm.
go
People
Buffalo
that don't
Wild
even
Wings,
watch sports or don't even go to a school will do a bracket.
right, right, yeah, or because it's the state they're from.
Yeah.
They're like shooting for that. So, uh, So it's a good buzz. There's a good buzz around college basketball, especially the men's tournament. So it's cool. It's exciting. It's fun to watch. It's fun to get into this every year. So one of my favorite times of the year in sports. But right now, we're getting ready to go into the bracket picks. And we talked a little bit about this last week, but I just kind of want to hit on this again. I feel like it's really important to watch the conference tournaments. I think it tells you a lot about the teams going into the bigger bracket. How do you feel about that? What's kind of your thought process there?
Yeah, because you want to see who's hot, and you're actually starting to play teams that are good instead of having like a cake schedule of like maybe play like 3 or 4 ranked teams in the season. And so that's what for the conference tournaments, because it's all like within a few days,
Right.
right? And so it's a huge buzz. You have to play, 3 games maybe within 4 days. And you could see a lot of metal, like internal, like who they are if they can make it through and win a bunch of games in a row, because you want teams that are hot. You
Yeah.
don't want a team that is ranked in the top 25 and loses in the first round of their conference tournament.
Yeah, that's rough because it's a long rest period, number one, right? So you got a
Yeah.
lot of wait till the tournament starts, and then you're on this low. You're not on that
Mhm.
momentum, you're not on that high of doing well in your conference tournament. Maybe your confidence is down a little bit. So if you're looking at conference tournaments, what teams lost early in their tournaments that are ranked high, could those be possible upset teams? As people start to make their brackets. I think it also shows you like how they react in a tournament style setting, because a normal game throughout the season, it's not win or go home, right? And obviously the big dance is win or go home, but also the conference tournaments are kind of win or go home because some teams that could be the difference between them getting in the tournament or not. But for
Right.
some other teams, it's still like, if you lose, you're out of the tournament, so you're still, even though if you're in the big tournament, you're still out of that tournament. So
Right.
it,
And then
it,
it
it, it
hurts
does have
your
that.
seating.
Right, right. Which, that could be good or bad in a lot of different times, though, because that's all bracketing, right? Like sometimes it's like you might be happy that you dropped a few spots,
Right.
depending on where they put you, you know. That's such I don't even, because it's not really luck of the draw, but, there's obviously teams that benefit from their seeding or where they draw, what spot they draw. So for me, the conference tournaments, not only they're fun to watch, but I think they're important for people who want to get a better idea of what's going to happen in the tournament. I think it does give you some insight to how the teams are playing and what teams you should look at. Um, so let's talk about the Pac-12 tournament for a second. Uh, looks like, I mean, Arizona, I think they were pulling out today, right?
Yeah. I didn't see anything that was Oregon one, UCLA one. Where are you?
Yeah, I was looking at that going, because what I was wondering, thinking about is like, man,
Arizona one. So the big right now, Arizona State and USC are playing.
so you could potentially have Arizona, UCLA playing in this Pac-12 championship, right?
Right.
And then you have them being two of the top seeds going into the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an interesting just scenario to play out. Like how does that affect these teams as they go in? Because then maybe you get them in the Elite Eight or the Final Four against each other
Right.
again. And so now you've got games like that I think make a difference. Uh, have you watched much Arizona and UCLA
No,
just
not much at
throughout the
all.
year?
I start to do my deep dive pretty soon here, where it's
Yeah,
nothing but
I haven't
college
watched it a
basketball.
lot throughout the year, but I definitely watched more UCLA than Arizona. But I think UCLA is a strong team right now. If people are looking for like a good team to make sure you get some points in your bracket, UCLA I think will get you a lot of points. Go a long
Well, they
way.
should be a 1 seed, you would think.
Yeah, if they finish out, win the tournament, I think they definitely are 1 seed.
Yeah, because the AP has them at 2 right now.
Hmm.
They've won 11 straight. Houston's won 11 straight. So they're a hot team.
Yeah, like I said, they also are a good team. So I think if I'm giving my early like favorite pick, I think UCLA is up there. I mean, you definitely it's hard not to like Houston, just based off their star power, and their record.
Shooting. Their shooting is, last year. Oof. Hopefully
Yeah.
their shooting's better this year. It was bad. Their
Obviously,
defense is amazing, but
it looks like Kansas will probably come in as a 1 seed too, right? So maybe you're gonna have UCLA, Kansas, Houston,
Bama.
and then Bama, right? But
Yeah.
they did Bama lose in their tournament? Is that why they dropped?
I think they lost a different game. So I think they're on a bye.
Well, shouldn't they be in the SEC tournament right now?
Yeah, but because there's so many teams, I think they had a bye.
Oh,
They
okay.
play Mississippi State tomorrow.
There you go. Okay. That's why they weren't playing still. I was like, where's
Yeah.
Alabama?
Well, they lost to Texas A&M on Saturday.
Right, right. Okay. I thought that was a tournament game, so but that's tough loss going into the tournament, man, because Texas
Right.
A&M's now ranked. They're number 2 in the SEC,
Right. The
23 and
road
8
game.
overall. But you still got Kentucky, you got Missouri, Tennessee, all ranked in the top 25. SEC looks tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I mean, obviously, if Bama wins the SEC tournament, you got to put them at the other 4 seed, right? Or the
Yeah.
other 1 seed.
Other 1 seed, yeah.
Yeah. So predicting the 1 seeds, yeah, I think you're looking at Alabama, UCLA, Houston.
Is
What about
Houston already won their? Nope, I guess not yet.
no? Yeah. What about Purdue? So Kansas, if they went out, they're definitely in. Purdue's ranked number 5. They're 26-5. They look really good. They got that big guy in the center.
Yeah, isn't he like the player of the year or
Yeah, the 7-footer.
yeah, they play Rutgers.
Yeah, he's averaging 22 and 12 or 22 and 13 almost.
Oh yeah, Zach Edey.
Yeah. Yeah, he's that's tough, man. Although last year he didn't look great.
He's 7'4".
Yeah, he's so big. Because in college, that's huge, man.
Yeah.
That's different. In NBA, there's a lot of 7-footers. There's not a lot of 7-footers in college, and there's not a lot of especially 7'2", 7'4".
Right.
That's rare in the NBA, let alone college.
That's where you give him the ball every single possession and let
Right.
him determine everything.
Yeah, so I think Purdue, they have a good shot in there. I think I could see them doing well. But those are kind of the big teams. I think as the tournaments play out, that's where I kind of pick my who's coming in hot, some of the sleepers, some of those 4 and 3, 4 seeds that because you do often see it's not every year that you just see one seeds, in
Right.
the Final Four.
You always have one outlier, at
Right.
least. Like an 8 seed or a 7, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
Yes. A 7 or 8 again, and or maybe you'll have two twos, or
mhm.
so you definitely have that, and a little. You think you see that more or less now than you used to?
I don't know. I mean, what didn't like NC State won when they were like an 8 seed, right?
Yeah.
You don't see I it's hard because everyone talks about it, but do you really ever see an 8, 9 seed win at all though?
No, not
It's
very
usually
often.
it's like a 1 through 4 always wins.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and for a while it was always like one of the top teams, right? Like a Duke,
Yeah,
Kentucky, UNC or Kansas. Like it just seemed like it was always those one seat, real powerhouse one seats.
right. So that's the thing is usually upsets happen in the first few the first few games. But once you get to the Sweet 16 and stuff, and the Elite Eight, then it's usually the top seeds win out.
Right. Although Carolina wasn't a top seed last year and they went to the championship game, right?
Weren't they a top 4 seed though?
I don't remember what seed they were. I know they weren't a one, that's for sure. I think they were like an eight, weren't they?
Was it?
They weren't high for sure. Because I
Well,
remember I had
the same team is not going to make it this year.
right, but I had them winning last year, of course, But I got a lot of points from them late in the brackets because they weren't not a lot of people had them
You're
there.
right; they're an 8 seed.
Yeah, yeah. I just remember I got most of my points late because we had our. I think I didn't I win our bracket because I got all those points from them late.
Yeah, it was either you or Wes. I was out fast.
Yeah, yeah. I think I ended up getting a bunch of points from them late and pulling the bracket out because of Carolina.
Yeah, I was just concentrating on the women's tournament. That's what my
Yeah,
focus was on.
yeah. Derek knows the so yeah, bracket. Well, we'll have our brackets come up and talk about that this year. So that'll be good for people who want to get their picks, kind of like we did with the NFL.
And then we can put a link in and people can sign up for our bracket challenge.
That's right. Yeah, well, we should get that set up. We'll get that set up for people. So if you're listening or watching, we'll get that set up here. If you want to join in the HSC podcast, we'll open it up to the listeners. I'll put that in the comments too, or in the description, so people know. We'll open it up for them. That'll be fun. Maybe we'll get a few people. Cool. All right. Well, that's any
Well,
final.
yeah, I got one. My
All
big
right.
topic.
What's your big topic?
Jim Boeheim.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot you.
So Jim Boeheim is retiring now. He kind of got forced out, I think, because I don't think he ever wants to leave. But he's been with Syracuse for 40s and 47 years. And he's retiring, so I get it. Everyone's like, oh, and they talk about how great a coach he is and how great. And he won one national championship in 47 years.
Right.
One.
And that's a long time. So typically, if you weren't at the school you're at, I would say that's okay. But you're at a big time school,
Yeah. You're in New York.
right? So you got the
Carrier Dome.
best, well, the best college breeding or
Yeah,
not breeding.
breeding grounds.
Well, I mean breeding
Yeah.
grounds, but recruiting,
Yeah.
breeding one of the best recruiting areas that you could get. Obviously, is right there where he's at. Being a New York school with all the New York uh, street ballers and kids growing up there, the great New York high school. teams. People literally like transfer into those schools, all the academies they have. New York, obviously, being the biggest basketball state tournament. I mean, it's like you do have the cream of the crop when it comes to players coming out of there for sure.
Right. And you look at it, like when the Big East was big, you had Georgetown, you had Villanova, St. John's, Providence, Syracuse, all these schools. But you know what? Syracuse didn't win a national championship.
No.
Georgetown did. Villanova did.
Yeah,
Providence.
Villanova won a couple.
Providence won one. I mean,
Right.
but where was Syracuse? It didn't happen until Carmelo Anthony came.
Right. Yeah, and the only reason Carmelo is because that wasn't that the first time they had the 1 year rule.
Yes.
So
And
he
then they
had to
got
come
rid of
in.
it because
Right.
LeBron came
Oh
out.
no. Well, no, because him and LeBron played. Oh yeah, yeah.
They came
LeBron
out the same
after. That's
year,
right.
but yeah,
That's right.
they
Because Carmelo did a year in college, and then LeBron was coming out of high school. So yeah, because
yeah.
I thought Carmelo had to, because I thought Carmelo would have been a straight out of high school guy.
But that can't be right though, because Durant had to go to school. Maybe Carmelo wanted to go for a year.
Maybe.
Because if it wasn't for him, then Boeheim would have been 47
Right.
years, zero championships.
Right, right. Um, yeah, and so I guess I haven't looked at all of his career stats too deep. Like I've never really been impressed with him as a coach, just because I just think you could do more at that school for sure.
He had the
But
novelty of the 2-3 zone.
yeah, how many tournaments did he go to? Like, what's his career win percentage? Like those kind of things.
Well, I mean, I guess he was a good regular season. So I think he made 30 something tournaments.
So you're 47 years, you're going 30 tournaments.
He was 48, and so he must have gone to 29 tournaments because he was 48 and 28.
Wow.
He had five Final Fours in 46 years.
Right.
Let's look at Rick Pitino.
Yeah, so he wasn't doing typically terrible. I mean, I guess, yeah, who are you comparing him to? Like is it the problem that he's gonna be a Hall of Fame coach? I mean, what's the issue? Because obviously he's going to Hall of Fame, right?
Right. Well, let's say Pitino, less years because he went and did pro coaching.
Right.
He has 2 national championships and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Final Four appearances.
Yeah.
That's like where let's look to put him. The problem is to put him like talking like he's Dean Smith or Krzyzewski. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, where does he rank, right? So let's talk about top 10 college coaches. I mean, obviously you've got, John Wooden, you got Krzyzewski. I mean, those are
Dean
got to be
Smith.
two of your top, right? Dean Smith, great coach. Well, I mean, I think Roy Williams has got to be close up there
Yeah.
because he was great at Kansas too,
Mm-hmm.
before, and then he did well at North Carolina. So you got to talk about him being up there. Uh, what about the Arizona guy? I always thought
Lute Olson.
Lute Olson. Yeah, I always thought he was a pretty good coach.
Well, let's see. So Roy Williams has won 3 national championships and 9 Final Fours.
Yeah, so
Lute
he,
Olson.
he's obviously up there. I mean, I think before it's all said and done, Bill Self obviously is going to be up there.
Yeah, Lute Olson. So Boeheim is comparable to Lute Olson, but he had like 400 more games. So Lute Olson won one national championship and had 5 Final Fours
Right.
and 500 less games.
So you're talking like, geez, that's 10 less years or more.
Yeah.
More than 10 less years because it's what, 30 games a year if you go to the tournament and have a couple wins.
Yeah. So here's the one. Oh, he only has, this is interesting. So, Calipari only has one national championship.
Who's that?
Calipari only has one,
Oh, really? Hmm.
but he has 6 Final Fours.
Yeah.
So he's already ahead of Boeheim,
Right.
and he's about 400 less games.
Well, I mean, everybody's going to have like 400 less games because nobody coaches for 50 years. What about the Michigan State coach, Tom Izzo?
Oh, Izzo. Yeah, Izzo should be.
So you got to have Izzo should be up there.
Because Izzo has. Oh, he only has one national championship, but 8 Final Fours.
8 Final Fours. Yeah, they were there a lot. Yeah, they didn't win a lot of them, but they were there a lot. And then, I mean, you always got to think about Bobby Knight. When you, I mean, I know he wasn't the best attitude for a coach, but you always saw him as a high level coach.
Yeah, let's see. Tark.
Tarkanian, yeah. I mean, they at least had, he's got a national championship under his belt for sure.
Yeah. What about?
But that's tough, come to UNLV, that's a hard team to be with a long time and win a lot of games.
Right. Let's see. Here's one.
So
Might be surprising.
you already said Patino, like you already looked at Patino's numbers are better. So he's got to be like close though to top 10.
Oh, Boeheim?
Yeah.
I would say top 10, but the problem is everyone's talking. Well, here's like he can be comparable to John Thompson.
Right.
Even though he, I think, coached for like 20 more years than John Thompson, but Thompson had one national championship and 3 Final Fours.
Right.
But he didn't.
I wouldn't put him as a spectacular coach. Like, I wouldn't mention him with the greats if I'm mentioning the greatest coaches. Like, if I'm breaking down the top 10, though, I definitely you could argue that he's in there in that 5 to 10 range. But is he sitting with the big guys? For sure not.
No. What was the coach of Michigan for the Fab Five?
Uh, was that Larry? Was Larry? No.
Steve Fisher.
Steve Fisher. That's right. It's good to call him Larry Fisher.
He had one national championship and 3 Final Fours in about 600 less games.
Right, right. Because I don't feel like Michigan had a coach for a long period of time like that.
Well, here's one you got to think of. Because he's now in the NFL or in the NBA, I think is a better coach than Billy Donovan.
Yeah.
2 national championships, 4 Final Fours.
Right.
In less time.
Yeah. So, but sometimes you got some of these coaches like did a lot, during short periods of time too. shorter periods of time. Like so there is that like longevity factor and like total number of tournaments. I bet you he's got to be close to being on top of that list.
Yeah, because of longevity.
Right.
You have to have a school that just doesn't care and just keeps you around.
Well,
And then
what do
here,
you
I think this one, no, Jay
what do you
Wright.
want out of your basketball coach though? Out of your men's college basketball coach, especially not recently, but when you're talking 50 years ago when he started, like you all you were asking for is your coach to take you to the tournament every year,
Right.
right?
But if I want to be considered one of the best, you need to
Yeah.
win more than one national championship if you're there
Yeah.
for 47 years.
Yeah. No doubt that, he's not he could be there for 100 years, and you don't necessarily make you great, right?
Because
Uh,
Jay Wright, he had two national championships.
yeah. Yeah. So you could come in and you could do it, you could fall into like uh Kentucky times, where you just or Kansas times where you just have these great teams and North Carolina times where you were every year you're going to the Final Four at least, you're winning national championships for a short, a span of 6, 7 years. Duke teams, like
Mhm.
obviously Krzyzewski, I mean, he played at a higher level for a longer time, but there was a time period where Duke was in every Final Four. It seemed like,
Right.
like,
Well, I kind of think it's going to be like if we do a Rushmore, it'd be Wooden, Krzyzewski, Dean Smith, and Roy Williams.
yeah, it's hard to argue that. Um, I think Patino has definitely put his stamp on the game. He's someone that I could make an argument for.
See, this is kind of crazy. Dean Smith only won two national championships,
Yeah,
but he had 11 Final Fours.
right. That's what I was saying. They were there every year, dude. It was just like every year.
I have one more I want to look up. I
But
think
they
he's only got one
kept losing
national
to,
championship.
it's like you're facing Duke all the time and Kentucky all the time and Kansas all the time. There were some powerhouses. I mean, you gotta that's got to be the best time in college basketball when 20 years ago 20 to 40 years ago, so that 20 to
See,
40,
I think the best was the 80s
right?
when you had Houston, Georgetown, North Carolina, Villanova, NC State, the craziness that happened with them. And then you go into the early 90s with UNLV, Duke.
Well,
That
UCLA,
I think was the golden, yeah.
UCLA's Kentucky, I think, yeah, from the 80s and 90s, that 20-year period is definitely the
Mm.
best period
Like
in the
Seton Hall against Michigan and bless you.
yeah, I think that's what's sad to me about college basketball. Like I've always been a college basketball fan, but I found the last 10 years or so I watch it a lot less. And like so, and you could say, well, that happens, but it doesn't happen with football. Like I never fell off of football or college football.
Because it matters more. Regular season in college basketball doesn't matter. It's all about March Madness now.
Yeah, I know, but I'm still like into it more. Like I could tell you the teams that were winning the conferences and ahead of time. I didn't have to do a
Right.
lot of research. Like now, like when I'm getting ready to my bracket, like I'm gonna go dig into all kinds of stats and I'm gonna spend all this time like trying to figure out, you know, it's kind of like handicapping a race horse race.
Right.
Just give me the Beckett and I'll just go through the stat book.
That's right.
So. Um, Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you as far as like him not being a great coach, but I definitely think he's up there. Yeah, you got to put him up there. Uh, and then see, looks like Ewing's out of Georgetown too.
Yeah, but they only won 13 games in 2 years.
Yeah,
Well, it's here's the thing. So like Georgetown's campus is in Washington, D.C.
Oh yeah, it's horrible now.
But because I've been there, not in, I walked by it. I saw the campus. I'm like, oh, it's Georgetown. That's cool. But then, like, I went to New York, and Syracuse and St. John's are there. Those teams should be so much better every year.
Yeah. But there's the Big East just isn't what it used to be for sure. That's one of the teams that Big East was so strong back, in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
They were getting a lot of good players all the time, but it's the recruiting. It's people are more willing to go national now. They're gonna go wherever they want these days. They're not staying at home like they used to be. It used to be kind of like, hey, I was from this area. I'm gonna go to school near this area, and that's why I think they're really good.
Georgetown's a small school. I mean, they don't have a football team,
Yeah, no,
right? St. John's doesn't have a football team.
those are the primary basketball.
Seton Hall,
Mhm.
they're all none of them have football teams. So they can't grow because where's all the money come from? Is
Right,
football.
right.
That's why you get bigger stadiums, but like Syracuse plays in the Carrier Dome, right? It's like amazing.
Yeah, they
So,
definitely have the advantage of those teams for sure. They should anyway.
mhm.
Yeah, it's just that's a I mean, it's hard to like say, make the kids go to college and play before they go to the NBA because it's just, you just can't do that. But I think I missed that part of college basketball where, they played all 4 years and you had these teams that were just they gelled together after 4 years and some of those
Right.
teams were just unstoppable at some points. Once those teams got to that fourth year and you had a couple juniors and a couple seniors that have been starting for a while, they were just made for really good games.
Well, and then maybe just to at least stay till your junior year. That's what UNLV, they were all juniors when they came out, or like Florida won back-to-back championships as sophomores and juniors,
Right.
right? I mean, Noah, Horford, and Brewer all were lottery picks, but they played till their junior year, won 2 national championships.
Yep. Yeah, it makes it a lot more fun to watch for sure. But you can't really
You can't fold them if you're going to make millions of dollars. I mean,
right. Yeah, because they could blow out, ACL or their
mhm.
knees, whatever. You don't want to take that away from them.
I know. And I mean, I know it's football, but it's like the Marcus Lattimore. Remember,
Yeah.
like the South Carolina running back, he was amazing. Blew out his knee. Never played in the NFL.
Yep. Yeah, he would have been a really, really good running back in the NFL, I think. Yeah, and his was nasty too. Oof,
Because he had
man.
more than one, I think. And then
Yeah, he is. He had two, but really bad ones. Like that was rough. All right, well, let's wrap it up here. We got what's the official start date of the tournament?
well, we're not are we counting the first four? Because I'm not really.
Yeah, I mean, do you get points for them?
Not really, I don't think. So the first four is the 14th and the 15th. And then the first round starts on the 16th.
Nice. So we'll probably have to we'll see them next week, the 15th then for round one of March Madness. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening and watching and subscribing. Please don't hesitate to leave comments in there. And we will see you guys next time.
Good one.